Eugene Cisco here, licensed attorney and certified counselor. And we are in another part of our series on employment. And we've discussed earlier, you might recall, or you can always look back on this channel, we've discussed some tips on what you can do to find yourself a job, how to develop a resume, and today we're going to talk about how to ask for a raise. There's kind of tricks to it and little tips and techniques you can use to increase your chances of getting a raise. It's one of the most uncomfortable situations you'll ever be in your employee-employer life relationship. It's very awkward. It's kind of weird. It almost throws you back to the time when you go and ask your mother and father for a raise in your allowance. It's very uncomfortable because you know that the party on the other side of the desk is going to scrutinize every word you say. And so you need to be prepared. So, and there's nothing wrong with asking for a raise. I always advocate if you're not happy and if money is the issue, then you should go to your employer, your supervisor, your manager, and ask for an increase. But you got to be smart about it. And there's a lot of things you can do to increase your chances, so we'll talk about some of those. First and foremost is the timing. Look at the timing mechanism. Look at your company. Look at the place you're working. You might want to refer to your personnel manual and your policy manual. Sometimes those manuals or those documents will set out some guidelines on when raises are due or when people can ask for them, when raises will be given. Some companies just do it automatically on an annual or yearly basis. And other companies don't have such procedure, and it's just kind of whoever has guts enough to ask at the right time. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that method because if you work in a company that has a policy manual and those things are highly regulated, then you just kind of have to look at the manual and wait, basically. But now if there is no such, if there's no guidance on that, then you kind of have to do what you need to do to try to get what you want. So when asking for a raise, there's one big thing you ought to do. Kind of figure out what you're worth. Figure out your marketability. Now, you've been working at this place supposedly for a while, so you kind of signed on for the salary or the pay that you have. That doesn't mean you have to accept that or keep it the rest of your life, although there are some companies that manage that way and they don't give raises easily. And so you have to consider all of those things. You kind of look at your company and if you keep your ear open, you'll hear your your colleagues and fellow employees talk about those things. And because people always like to talk about money. And so if you pay attention and you listen, you're going to kind of get some tips and clues on how that works. But let's say it's a free-for-all. Say you work in a place where it's whoever asks, whoever's got the guts enough to ask. So let's put some things together. Let's first off find out what your marketability is, basically what you're worth. What the job that you're doing with the experience you have, what does it get you in other similar companies? So that's your comparison point. Like, if you're making $20 an hour for your particular job skill or your particular position, and in similarly situated companies that the rate of pay for that particular job is $26, so you kind of figure you're undervalued. So that's the first analysis. Find out what your particular position and your experience and your skill set is worth after you've had experience. Which kind of leads me to the very first thing you ought to think about, and that's the timing of the thing. Not only the timing of the company, is the company in good shape? And you'll know that. Like, it would be a bad idea to ask your boss or manager for a raise if they just sent out pink slips and were laying off a bunch of people. That's a bad time. You're not going to get anywhere by asking for a raise during those times. But now from the employer's perspective or from the manager's perspective, there probably is no good time to ask for a raise. However, if you want to get one or you need one, and you want one, there's no time like the present than to ask. But you want to do it smartly. So after you've done your research and you kind of know what your marketability is, then the next thing is to try to figure out where that sweet spot is. You know you want more than you're getting paid, but should you really ask for as much as you can get? There's two schools of thought on that. You'll never know unless you ask, and if you don't ask, you'll never get it. Okay? So, but that's a concern. You've got to kind of know what your number is, but you need to know what your number is. Don't ever go into a meeting asking for a raise and not having a solid idea about what the figure is. It's just like your interview. We did a cast on interviewing. You should always know what you want to get paid during the interview. You should always know, and you shouldn't be ashamed to ask for to ask for what you think you're worth. So this is no different. But the timing also comes into play when, you don't want to ask for a raise 6 months after you've been there. I think that's a little soon. A year, probably. Probably after a year is better. As far as just a pure timing mechanism, if your policy manual does not allow for, mandatory or regular raises, then a year is probably about right. But now, so you've thought about that. It's been a year. You like the company and you think you have performed well. Just thinking you've performed well isn't enough. You really need to come into that meeting with a little more information. You want to come to the meeting knowing what your contribution has been over and above what you're already getting paid. One of the things that always bothered me as an employer is when employees ask you if they get a bonus. Well, a bonus to me is one of those things that's an extraordinary measure. And it's for certain situations that are over and above the unexpected workload. You don't just get a bonus because it's Christmas. That'd be nice, and some companies do it, but as an employee, you ought not expect it. When people say they deserve a raise, then you've got to show that. That's your burden. That is your burden to prove that you, instead of deserve, I like to say you're worth it, and that you have brought extra value to the company. So that's the way to approach it with an employer or a manager. You show them how much you're making, and if there's any way possible, show them the things that you have done that have made the company or made the organization money. So those are the way you want to kind of frame it. You want to be reasonable in your request, but you also want to be firm. You want to walk in confidently. And one of the ways to accomplish this is to go through a mock raise request or a raise meeting. Get someone that you trust to sit across from you and say, let's do some role playing. Let's pretend that I'm going to come in and ask for a raise. You be the boss and I'm the employee. Because now that helps you formulate a dialogue. Because if the person that you ask to help you is sincere and does the job right, then they will ask good probing questions. And you want to be able to defend your request. Just like in your interview, you want to be able to defend your qualifications and defend your skill set. And you want to sell that employer, that potential employer during the job interview, that you're the right person. So it's a similar situation. So you are in a position as an employee to convince the employer or your manager that you have performed over and above what was expected, and that by doing that you have made the company money. You have caused them to reach certain levels. Maybe you're on a production basis. Maybe your work is production based, and you can show them that you have produced over and above what's reasonable compared to what you believe everyone else is. One of the worst things you could do when you go in to ask for a raise is to tell your employer or your manager that you need a raise. Well, damn, everybody needs money. And that's what's going to go through their head. What's going to go through their head is, yeah, hell, I need money too. Wonder where I get money if I need it. What you want to say is, again, that you, first off, like the company, you've loved working there, you've been there more than a year, and that you've produced. Show them, if there's a way to show them evidence or proof of your production, then show it. Put it out there, and don't be afraid, and say, listen, this is what I think I'm worth. I've looked at other positions in the company or in other companies, and this is what they're making. And then that's when you throw your request out. Because what you've done there in that 10-minute, 15-minute conversation is told them that you like the company, you're happy with your decision to work there, and that you know what your value is, and that you have, in the time that you've been there, have increased the value of the company, that you have been a contributor, and that you want to continue on with the company, but you'd like to have a little more money. So that's always tough, because when you ask for that raise, some employers and some managers think that if you don't get your raise, then you're going to become dissatisfied and you're going to start looking elsewhere. And that's probably not a bad thought for them to have. If they think they're going to lose a valuable employee, then they'll probably kick in some money. But now if they're a little indifferent, and if they don't think you're as valuable as you think you are, then probably the answer is going to be no. So you have to be prepared for no. You're not going to get a yes or a no right then and there. It is seldom that you're going to get a yes or a no. Most often you're going to get a no if the manager has his stuff together. They're going to say, listen, this is a bad time. I understand. You have done well. You've done very well. But right now for our company, it's kind of a bad time, so I'm going to have to say, no on that. So if faced with that, and some places want to follow up, some people suggest, and I think it's a good idea. Again, though, this is a little touchy. Once you have your meeting and you follow it up with a letter, a clearly crafted, concisely drafted letter, you start out by saying, thanks for meeting with me the other day. To review, I requested a raise. You can articulate then and kind of recap what you're making and what other people in a position similarly situated to you are making. You also want to maybe highlight what you have done and how the company has grown since you've been there. And you believe you're a valuable asset. And so then you ask for your raise. You do that all in a letter. So you follow up your personal meeting with a letter if you don't have a decision. So, and some people might wait a week or so after you have the meeting if you've not heard anything, then send off a letter, and that will jog the memory of the manager or the boss or the CEO or whoever it is. And then they will most likely address you then. So be prepared for a no. It's always a touchy situation, because when you ask that, again, earlier, when you ask that, they're going to be thinking, hell, he didn't get a raise, or they didn't get a raise, or she didn't get a raise, and so they're going to be angry, and they're going to be upset, and I'm going to have to deal with that. And that's probably so, and that's probably fair. If you believe you deserve it, you're not going to get it, you're going to be hurt. You're going to be a little upset. But oftentimes in our world today, especially, the younger you are, if it's a new job, you're anxious, and your patience are not as carefully honed as they are when you get a little older. And so you want things quickly and you want things now. Well, things like raises don't come easy. This is a tough marketplace. No matter what field you're in, it is tough. Currently we're undergoing a recession. Companies are cutting back. They're laying off people. So it's a tough economy out there to ask for a raise. But if you believe you deserve it and you think you're worth it, more importantly, and you've brought value to the place that you work, then go ahead and ask. Ask for a formal meeting if that's what they want. And you'll find that out either again in the personnel policy, or you can ask some of your colleagues, how do I ask for a raise? Just ask them that, how do I ask for a raise? And they'll give you the skinny on it. They'll tell you what that experience is like. So be ready for it. And you should embrace it. If you're young to the workplace, that's another learning experience. Do not shy away from it. The more of those you do in the work place, the better equipped you'll be at your other job. Hardly anyone these days works a job 40 years, and you're going to change jobs 7, 8, 9, 10 times in your work career. So all these things like asking for a raise are just other growth experiences for you. So don't shy away from them. Be confident, throw your shoulders back, keep your head up, and be certain when you ask. And don't be mad if you're rejected. And you never issue an ultimatum. You never go into a negotiation of any kind, particularly a raise, saying if you don't do this, then I'll quit. Because when you give ultimatums, generally you're going to be forced to do the thing you don't probably really want to do. So it's best to keep that quiet unless you absolutely are certain that you're going to leave. You never do that. You don't want to. Most of these people don't want to be pushed around, and they don't want to feel bullied or threatened. So by issuing a boss an ultimatum, they feel threatened, and they're going to let you go, or they're going to say no, and then you're going to be mad, and then you're going to be forced to leave. So kind of keep that one to yourself unless you fully intend to pull that trigger. So again, to recap, ask, be confident, do your research, find out what you're worth, find out your value, be able to show the employer what you have done, extra trainings, your experience, and how that plays out in other markets. Follow up with a letter if necessary, and be prepared to say no, or be prepared to hear no, and then you have to react. And lastly, if they do tell you no, then it's really a good idea, and I think they'll appreciate this, I know I would, to say, okay, that's cool, and I can understand it, and I appreciate it. That's what you say. I understand it, and I appreciate it. Could you kind of give me an idea of what I can do within this company? Because I really like it here, you can say. I really like it here, but what can I do to increase my chances of getting more money or climbing up the salary scale? What can I do? What do you think I need to do to increase those chances? And you may get a positive response. And what that does is let that person know that you're going to work harder, you're going to do what they've asked you to do, so the next time you go at this person or you go to the company, you will have done everything they've asked you to do on that list. And then when you go back the second time, your chances skyrocket. So do all those things. And if you want a raise, go and get you a raise. Thank you.